I know this is kind of an odd situation that we're going through, and nobody's ever done anything like this before because we never had anything like this before. So hopefully everybody's staying safe and following the rules and going along, and we're going to try and do something that we've never done before either. We're going to try and do some videos with the actual hands-on part from here in the shop at home, and try and use that to enhance the new material on fuels and stuff that we're going to be talking about going forward on the drive page. So basically what we're looking for is to give you some idea of some of the stuff that you may be seeing going forward, either if you follow through with school later on, or if you're taking the state test, which some of you will be taking before school gets out, even though we're technically out, we're not, before we get out in June. So that being said, we're going to try and cover fuels a little bit. These things up here next to me are kind of an antique in a sense that they're carburetors, but we're going to start with them and then move ourselves into some fuel injection. We won't be able to do it as extreme as we normally would, but at least it'll give you an idea of what we're looking at. So to begin with, this right here is a 2-barrel carburetor. And this isn't a normal 2-barrel carburetor. This is one that we have to run for some of the sanctioning bodies with the yellow Nova, but this is a 500 CFM cubic feet per minute carburetor that we use with that vehicle. It gets its name from the 2-barrel because it has the 2 throttle valves that open on the bottom of it. These valves are controlled by your foot, and as they open, they allow more air and fuel into the engine, okay? And that's a 2-barrel. When the vehicle started off 120 years ago, most of them were operating off of a single barrel like your lawnmower does. We moved from that 2-barrel to this 4-barrel setup, in which case we have 4 complete individual throttle valves that are controlled by your foot, and as they open, they cause it to take and increase the amount again of air and fuel that enters into the engine. This particular one is a vacuum secondary, which means that the back 2 don't open until they have enough vacuum to create a pull to cause that to take and come open like that with 4 of them at once. Now, the reason that we're using these, even though we haven't had one on a vehicle sold new since 1986, is the theory on this doesn't change. What works with this is the same thing that's going to work in some instances even with fuel injection. The engine on your car is really just a giant air pump. And so what we're going to do is not only are we going to burn fuel, but we're going to burn a whole lot more air than we're going to burn fuel, to the tune of about 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel. So almost 15 to 1 in difference. That air that goes into that engine has to pass through something to create a motion to pull fuel in, or either have it, in this case, pulled through, or it's going to dig and need something with the fuel injector, which is going to spray directly into either the port or the cylinder and cause it to happen that way. However, even with fuel injection, we still got to be able to find a way to get air in. Air operates by going through this as the pistons travel down and create a low pressure in a cylinder. That low pressure, with a high pressure above outside of the engine, creates a differential. The differential means that the air then, high pressure seeking a low pressure, is then going to pass through and go into that cylinder. You feel that as a suction if you put your hand over the top of the carburetor as the engine's cranking or running. You're going to feel that right on your hand. That's called vacuum. In the text that we've got on the page, you're going to see that there's a couple different kinds of vacuum. Vacuum is used irregardless of whether it's a carburetor, fuel injection, doesn't matter. Has to have vacuum in order to get air to go into the cylinder. That vacuum is going to come in 2 forms, which is manifold and ported. Manifold vacuum is going to occur below the throttle plates in the intake manifold, which we talked about when we were dealing with engines. The air goes through some passages, we'll show you in another video later in the week, of how it enters into each individual cylinder. That's going to be your manifold. Going through here above is going to be your ported, so anything that enters through these holes above the plates is going to be your ported vacuum. They work opposite each other. Manifold vacuum is going to be high when the throttle plates are generally closed. When the throttle plates open up, manifold vacuum is going to drop. Ported exact opposite. At idle, very little ported vacuum. Once we pick up RPM and the throttle valves open or the air valves open, we're going to cause more air to pass through this carburetor or through the air valve management valve for fuel injection, and we're going to increase our ported vacuum. Those two working together are how we're going to manage to get air into this engine to make it fire. If you don't have oxygen, you don't have a fire. If we don't get air in that cylinder, it doesn't matter what the spark plug does, it doesn't matter what gasoline we put in it, we're never going to get it to burn if we don't have oxygen to make the fire to go with it. So that's the purpose of one of the purposes of what these do. Similar to what we would do with fuel injection, we would control the air with an air management throttle valve, and that air valve would control what goes into a plenum that ultimately goes to each cylinder. How we feed the fuel is how we change it when we go to fuel injection. Again, we'll talk about that later. This is another carburetor. This one actually came off of the Nova. It's one of the smaller ones that we use. It's an actual 4-barrel. On the bottom side, you can see that it again has all 4 as it drips gas all over me. And this particular one still has what we call a choke, same as this, on the top. We can control how much air is going in by closing off that choke, similar to this carburetor. And by blocking it off, we prevent air from coming in. We allow more fuel to go into the engine, and that allows us to try and keep it running while we're trying to warm the engine up. As the engine gets hotter and hotter, this choke valve is going to take and open, either manually or electronically or by heat. In any event, it's going to take and open up. It's going to take and allow for the air to come in, more and more of it as it gets warmed up. Cold day in the middle of January, you go out to start, she's going to be pretty much closed off. You go out in July, it's probably here to start with, and it's fully open after a matter of minutes of it running. We're going to start with it there, try and connect the vacuum pieces with what we've discussed with here with the carburetors, with the actual text that we've put on there. If you take those, put them together, we've got a quiz coming later in the week that's going to pull all of this stuff together. We're still going to talk about gas, we're still going to talk about how this breaks down, atomizes, and vaporizes the fuel so that it's able to burn. Remember, your car, like we talked before, you may pump gas into it as a liquid, but that engine doesn't run on a liquid, it runs on a vapor. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the coming ones. We're going to go through a couple things on this, and then we'll put out a fuel injection system, and we'll take a look at the differences between the two. But for now, stay safe, stay smart, and we'll get a Zoom meeting together and get the information out to you, and we can talk live if you have any questions. See you later.